Hello, my name is Rajib Shaw. Thank you very much for inviting me to give these small remarks. I congratulate all the organizers and co-organizers to arrange this very important meeting at the junction of the 20th year from the Indian Ocean tsunami. I personally had the opportunity to visit the affected area of this 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. My first visit was in Aceh. Actually, my first visit was in 2005 in March. And then with many of the collaborators, the Shakula University, Mercy Malaysia, then that time BRR, World Bank, WSSI. So with many organizations, we collaborated, tried to contribute a little bit on the recovery process. And I personally learned a lot. And, like this particular disaster was a major turning point, not only for Indonesia, but I think the whole world. We had never had a disaster which killed so many nationalities. I think it was more than 55 nationals who lost their lives and also affected such a vast different countries. So I think over the last 20 years, the disaster risk reduction as a whole has evolved significantly. Following years, we know that in 2005, we started the first major global framework, which is the Hyogo Framework for Action. Then in 2015, we started the Sendai framework. So in the global level, I think more the disaster risk reduction have been aligned with the development practices as well as the other major initiatives like climate change or the urban agenda and so on. But we had many disasters in between also over the last 20 years. We had Hurricane Katrina in 2005. We had Cyclone Nargis, Sichuan earthquake in China, 2008. Then we had Haiti earthquake in 2010, Tohoku earthquake and tsunami 2011, Typhoon Haiyan in Philippines 2013, Nepal earthquake in 2015, Sulawesi earthquake and tsunami 2018, COVID pandemic, and very recently Turkey and Syria earthquake in 2023. But the events which I mentioned only were the mega events. But every day, I think in many places we have been facing different types of disasters, be it hydrogeological, be it geological hazards or the hydrometeorological. Let me focus on my own reflection, how I see the overall evolution. If we talk about three things, governance, people's perception or education, and technology, I think in the governance aspect, this Indian Ocean tsunami was one of the major trigger of starting many of the national disaster management legislations or law. So from 2005 onward, we have seen many countries, especially in the Asia Pacific region, they have made their own disaster management law and enacted those laws for different disaster situations. In different countries, national disaster management authorities or national disaster management organizations were formed. Also, we have seen that in the regional level, there have been this very prominent Indian Ocean tsunami early warning system. A major shift also, what I see in the governance is while we had the National Disaster Management Law, but also the DRR governance has increased focusing on the localization. Most of the government, they have understood, recognized the importance of the localization, strengthening the local authorities, the local communities, and so on. Urbanization or the cities and the urban risk management has become a major challenge. And also this interface between disasters and climate change, especially how you bring in the governance aspect, I think that also became very, very critical as critical issue. As part the education or awareness, I think again, both the frameworks, Hyogo as well as Sendai, has focused very strongly on the importance of education, formal, non-formal, and informal education. I think the role of children and youth and their leadership has been focused in many places. We also try to understand the importance of local knowledge and indigenous knowledge and how it can actually be blended with the existing as well as emerging technologies. There have been many initiatives on that. We also saw some very significant changes in the higher education program. In many countries, many universities, they have started the master's program, some places, even undergraduate programs or diploma on very specifically on the disaster management. And this is also a very, very significant, I think, significant changes over the last 20 years. In terms of technologies, yes, we have tried to enforce the existing or the traditional technology, whether it is the satellite or the remote sensing or the GIS, but we also have these new and emerging technologies, whether it is the drones or robotics or big data or AI. I think in both cases, we have understood the importance of the data, and data analytics, I think, have formed a very, very important part over last several years. I also see a significant collaboration with so-called the non-traditional actors in disaster management. We have tried to collaborate with the private sector. Earlier, while private sector was doing more on the corporate social responsibility, but now many of the private sector has taken the disaster management as one of their core business. We see many different types of product, we see different types of systems, we see different types of processes generated, and this whole concept of the social innovation in disaster risk reduction has been very strong. The virtual reality or the augmented reality or the mixed realities, I think that has also taken place or evolved very strongly. Nowadays, in many of the schools, they have used the mixed reality for enhancing the risk perception, along with, of course, we should not underestimate the actual field visit with the town watching, knowing the neighborhoods and so on. Over the last several years, I think there are many, many different concepts, and possibly I'm not in a position to summarize everything. But just to give you a few glimpses, what I feel were important, I think increasingly we are focusing on the systemic risk approach. We have understood, we have tried to make the frameworks for systemic risk approach. There have been some recent approaches for quantification of different types of systemic risk, as well as how these chain reactions of different systems works. That's a very, very new thing. When we were talking more on the risk reduction, now we try to talk about the resilience building. Resilience building also not only just the hard infrastructure or soft infrastructure, the ecosystem-based resilience became also very, very important. Of course, we need to focus on the critical infrastructure. The hard infrastructure is very, very important, but also how we bring this blue and green infrastructure into the overall planning process. I think that's also very important. We try to understand more on the pre-disaster recovery planning. Earlier, we used to talk about okay, after the disaster, there are many different phases. But now when we talk about the preparedness, how we can make an advanced recovery planning, impact-based investment has become very, very strong. Earlier, we used to talk about the urban resilience or the city is resilient. But now we know that the urban systems are very much depending on the rural systems for its daily operation, whether it is food, energy, water systems, and so on. So urban rural collective resilience became very, very important. Earlier, we used to talk about different types of hazards as multi-hazard. Now we have, I think, focusing more on the all-hazard approach. And all-hazard approach is not just the natural hazard, but try to focus on the biological hazards, technological hazards, cyber hazards, and so on. And as I mentioned earlier, I think the stakeholders' partnership, stakeholders' ownership, stakeholders' engagement, different types of stakeholders. Civil society has been a very prominent stakeholder always, but we also increasingly see youth group, then science and technology, then private sector, even the local and indigenous communities. So there have been a very, very diverse stakeholders. And I think the thing which I personally learned that disaster risk reduction is a shared responsibility, and more we collaborate, more we co-design, I think it's become more effective. So means, of course, there are many other things which possibly I was not been able to focus, but I would very much look forward actually to the proceedings of this very important event. And I congratulate once again to the organizers and co-organizers for bringing this very, very important event at that very important junction of the 20 years from the Indian Ocean tsunami. Thank you very much.